Welcome to Table for One. I'm the narrator, and today I'm going to be talking about Voidfall. Specifically in this video, I'm going to be going over everything you need to know about upkeep. Let's get rolling. All right, so I'm all set up here to talk about everybody's favorite part of Voidfall, upkeep. I've got the Galactic board here on the solo and co-op side, but it's going to be the same for the competitive side. So during the evaluation phase, there's a step right here, it's step 2 on this side of the board, where you need to pay your upkeep. So upkeep is the one time in the game that you cannot use credits in place of your food, energy, or materials. Credits are not allowed. And so this is essentially when you're paying the actual costs to maintain your space empire here. So whether that be food, energy, or material, credits, your citizens can't eat credits. So you have to use those, just those resources. So let's figure out how to calculate your upkeep first. I've got a highly fictionalized map here, but it's a 2-player game that I've set up with our player being green. So we have these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 sectors, and then these 2 destroyers belong to the other player, and those are yellow. So those are not our sectors. So upkeep comes primarily from 2 places. First, on your agenda cards, and we've got one right here, there are 2 upkeep symbol on the bottom of each agenda card. So for the moment, let's pretend this is the only agenda card I have. There's 2 upkeep, so that's 2. The other place where upkeep typically comes from is from your sectors. So in a typical sector, like this standard sector here, you can have up to 3 installations and 3 guilds. If you have all of these slots filled, you're going to see this upkeep symbol on the last one. So in this sector, I would have to pay 1 to upkeep, and that's in addition to the 2 upkeep I have here. So that brings me up to 4. So then you go around across all your other sectors. I have 3 guilds here, so there's an upkeep. I have 2 installations here, so I don't need to pay any upkeep on those installations. So let's say that's my total upkeep. Just as an example, for the end of this cycle, I've got 4 upkeep, right? These 2 and these 2. Let's just pretend that's it. To satisfy that 4 upkeep, if we look at the Galactic board here, my food counts as each food counts towards 1 upkeep satisfaction, or I could use, in any combination, 2 energy and materials. So that could be 2 energy, 2 material, or 1 energy and 1 material. So food is going to be the most efficient way to satisfy your upkeep. So if you've got 1, 2, 3, 4 upkeep in total, and you have 4 food, that's probably the best way to pay it off. You spend the 4 food, and then your upkeep is satisfied. Say you have only 2 food, I would spend the 2 food, and then use whatever energy and materials you have left in combinations of 2 to pay off the other upkeep. So if you had, let's say you had 2 food and 4 energy and no materials, you can spend 2 food, and then the 4 energy counts towards 2 more upkeep. If, for example, you had 2 food, 3 energy, and 1 material, that would also count. You could pay the 2 food, and then 2 energy for the next upkeep, and then 1 energy, 1 material for the next. Again, can't emphasize enough, you cannot use credits, and science resources play no role in upkeep. Now, if you don't have enough resources to pay for your upkeep, so let's say you have no materials and no energy and no food. We'll just say you have nothing, and you've got a couple upkeep to pay. For each upkeep that you cannot pay, you're going to lose 3 influence. So that's going to be painful come the end of the game. So you definitely want to avoid this and keep it in mind as you're playing through the cycle. Keep an eye on your total upkeep, and are you going to be able to pay it off at the end of the cycle so you don't have to lose that influence. Now, it's also important to note that if you have the resources to pay for your upkeep, you have to pay for it. You cannot decide strategically that I would rather keep this energy and materials and just pay the influence. It's not an option. If you have the funding, you have to pay for the upkeep. All right, now the next thing we should talk about is trade tokens. So let's say that I have a trade token when it comes to this step where we're paying upkeep. And remember, trade tokens can only be stored on your agenda cards. So if I've got one right there, it covers up the upkeep. You'll notice it's the same shape as the little upkeep cutout. So that's where the trade token goes. It covers up the upkeep, and now I don't have to pay that when it comes to upkeep time. So that saves me to upkeep. And when upkeep is covered up like this by a trade token, it, for all game purposes, does not exist. So we'll come back to that in a minute and what that really means. But your trade tokens are great for saving you resources when it comes to the upkeep step. Now, there are some other things I want to point out on the sector tiles when it comes to upkeep, just for your reference that you might run into. So first is that some special sectors will have additional upkeep. So this sector here, you'll notice that it has one upkeep just for being in that sector. I think this is the comms relay. Also, same thing for right here. This is the Megalopolis. This is the Novarkon Palace, and then actually 2 upkeep here for the Ancient Ruins. If you have that sector, even though this one in particular, you can't put any installations or guilds. Just by holding that sector, you have to add 2 to your upkeep. So watch out for any special sectors like that. And that also includes, for this yellow player here who's playing as House Novaris, this home sector has 1 upkeep. So if that's the house that you've chosen, you've got 1 additional upkeep in that sector. Now, again, generally speaking, you're going to have to pay 1 upkeep for the last guild or installation slot that's filled on any sector. But look at this one here for a second. So it has 2 pre-printed Bankers Guilds, and there's 1 Bankers Guild here on the upkeep slot, and the other slot is empty. So this could have happened in 1 of 2 ways. Maybe I took over the sector and put that guild there, and then I just did that in a silly and inefficient way, in which case I should have just put it here. The other thing that could happen is maybe I had a Farmers Guild there first and then added this Bankers Guild, and perhaps a game effect, like a crisis card, for example, told me to discard 1 guild from a non-home sector, and I selected to get rid of this Farmers Guild. When you do that, you can take your other guilds and reshuffle them in that sector so that they're not on the upkeep spot. You only have to pay the upkeep if it is all filled. If there's a way to rearrange the guilds or installations so that the upkeep slot is not filled, you should do so. Now, one other thing I want to point out is in this example, I am playing as House Astrotron, and part of their special ability here is when you get into the evaluation phase, phase C, you can activate 2 fleet power, but also you have to pay 2 additional upkeep every time. So if you're playing as this house, again, be aware that your upkeep is going to be at least 2 higher every cycle. The next thing I think I want to talk about are agenda cards. There are a few agenda cards that will score based on upkeep. So let's talk about what this means. This is a support agenda. It's called Optimized Power Supply. And this first one says it's got a less than or equal to 6 with a upkeep symbol. And it says if you satisfy this requirement, you get 5 influence during the agenda scoring part of each cycle. So what that's saying is if you have 6 or less total upkeep. Now, it doesn't say that you have to satisfy those upkeep, but you must have 6 or less. So again, this trade token is covering these 2. So for all game purposes, these 2 upkeep do not exist. They don't count towards the 6, but these 2 are not covered, so they do count. So then you look around your sectors, and if you've got at least another 4 more, you meet that criteria and you can score it. There is another support agenda that allows you to score based on upkeep. And it works similarly, but you need to have 10 or more total upkeep. And again, anything covered with a trade token is not going to count. There's one wealth agenda that can score based on your upkeep. And in this layout here, because there's a corruption here, you would not normally score this this agenda slot. But for the purposes of completeness, let's talk about what the criteria is. So it says on Trade Monopoly, you score 3 influence for every pure sector you have that does not have any contribution to your upkeep. So in this scenario, let's go ahead and remove this for a moment. This is a pure sector, and it does not contribute to upkeep in any way, not by installations, not by guilds, not by any other special means. So that would be 1 pure sector that does not contribute to upkeep, and therefore would give me 3 influence. The last agenda card that might score based off of upkeep is a dominance type of card. And it says here, for each pure sector you have, that contributes 2 or more upkeep in total, you gain 5 influence. So this peer sector gains 2. This peer sector also gives you 2, so they would both score in this example. Now, of course, there are a couple of technology cards that modify your upkeep as well, so let's look at those two. And specifically, they're both improved technologies. The first is Data Refinery. So this is a technology that starts with House Belatan, and it says on the improved version, during the evaluation phase, you may spend credits to satisfy 2 upkeep each. So basically, energy and materials will satisfy half an upkeep each, right? Your food will satisfy 1 upkeep each, and if you have this specific improved technology, you may spend credits, and this is the only time you may spend credits to satisfy upkeep, and each credit is worth 2 upkeep, so that's pretty powerful. The other improved technology that will interact with upkeep is energy cells, and this begins with House Dunlark, and it says, during the evaluation phase, your upkeep on sectors are satisfied for free. So that means you only have to pay for the upkeep from your agendas. Your upkeep anywhere on the map is satisfied for free. Now, it's worded that way for an important reason. Let's take a look at Industrial Conglomerate here again for a moment. It says if you have 10 or more upkeep, you gain 6 influence. So if you're trying to figure out if you have this technology, and you're trying to figure out how they interact, I have 2, 4, 6 upkeep from my agendas that I would have to pay, plus I have upkeep on my sectors that's satisfied for free. So the upkeep still exists. So it would count towards any of these agendas when you go to score. It's just that you don't have to pay for it. So this upkeep exists. It's just paid for. It's satisfied for free. The only time your upkeep doesn't count is when it's covered up by a trade token like this. Now it no longer counts. A couple other things to point out. This sector here has 1 upkeep and it's corrupted. And then this agenda card here has 2 upkeep and this is corrupted. When it comes to paying upkeep, corruption has no effect whatsoever. So this is still 2 upkeep. It doesn't matter that it's corrupted. There's 1 upkeep here. It doesn't matter if it's corrupted, pure. It plays no role in upkeep. So I just want to point that out as well. Now, the last thing I want to go over is a handful of galactic events that interact with upkeep. So there is 1 galactic event for cycle 1, where one of the scoring conditions at the end of the cycle has to do with upkeep. So this is the card Time of Reckoning, and the top scoring option is if you have 3 or more upkeep from sectors, then you gain the reward, which is to increase 1 pure population. And again, if that interacts with energy cells, you do still have upkeep on your sectors. It's just paid for free. So if you have this improved energy cells by the end of cycle 1, and this card comes up and you've got at least 3 places where you have upkeep on the map, then you've satisfied that criteria still. And of course, it works the same way if you don't have that technology too. So that's the only cycle 1 event. There are 3 cycle 2 galactic events that'll score based off agendas. The first is Triumph Over All, and it's the second piece here. And this says if you have 10 or more upkeep, and then there's a little green check mark, that means the upkeep has to be satisfied for this to count. So unlike Industrial Conglomerate here, where you have to have 10 or more upkeep, this is you have to have 10 or more upkeep, and it all must be paid. If you have paid for all that upkeep, then you get the bonus, which is in this case either 10 influence or advancing your politics track. The next cycle 2 event is Dark Ages, and it works similarly to the previous one. This is if you have 8 or more completely satisfied upkeep. So if you have, say, 10 upkeep and you can only pay for 8 of it, that does not count. You have to have 8 or more upkeep and satisfy all of it. Then you get the bonus, which is you can gain an agenda card. The last cycle 2 event that interacts with upkeep is Strength in Numbers. And that says down here, if you have 4 or less upkeep in total, there's no green check mark, so it doesn't mean you have to have paid for it, but as long as your total upkeep is 4 or less, then you get the bonus, which is 4 influence and or remove a corruption. So again, I want to point out here, if you've got upkeep that's covered by a trade token, it does not count. So if you had, say, no sectors with any upkeep, and you had 4 agendas like this, and 2 of them had trade tokens, then you've got 1, 2, 3, 4 total upkeep, which is 4 or less, and that would count. But in that same scenario, if you had only 1 trade token, now you've got 6 upkeep, and you've crossed that threshold, so you would not get the bonus. And lastly, there is 1 cycle 3 event that interacts with upkeep, and that is Total War. There's a few components to this card, but the part that's important is the bottom right corner here. It says for every sector you have that gives you 2 or more upkeep, you gain 3 influence. And these do not need to be pure sectors. This is just any sector in this case. And 2 or more is important because a standard sector, for example, the most you're ever going to get in a standard sector is 2. But in this sector, if we use that as an example, and we put this Farmer's Guild back, we get 1 here, and assuming we had 2 installations, we get another here, and then a third for just having the sector. So you can get more than 2 upkeep from any one sector, at least when considering some of the special sectors such as that one. So for each sector that has 2 or more upkeep, whether or not you've managed to pay for them, you get 3 influence. And that's about it. I think that's everything that has to do with upkeep. So if you had any questions, hopefully I've answered them. If I missed something or haven't answered a question, please leave a comment, let me know, and I'll get back to you. And of course, if you have any other questions about Voidfall, let me know about that as well. I'd be happy to make other of these quick tutorial type videos diving into individual aspects of the game. And beyond that, if you're still here, I would always appreciate a subscription and a like, and any other comments of any kind. I'm always happy to see them. So let me know what you're thinking. But that's what I've got this time. So I'll see you next time on Table for One. Thanks.